I think there are many singles or couples that may welcome this minimalistic variation of easy homemade bread in the air fryer. One of the reasons may be that not everybody has an oven at home, or maybe also that using an air fryer is more economic option. Lastly, being able to prepare a nice small warm loaf of bread at home is quite promising and easily manageable in the small spaces as well. Here are the ingredients that I use for bread dough: flour, water, salt, dry yeast. You may also have a look at the utensils. If you already know my recipe for bread in the oven, the process and the steps will be familiar to you. But let's start. As soon as I prepare all ingredients, I start with weighting and combining dry ingredients: flour, salt, and dry yeast. I like to sieve flour for baking. It is not a must. However, sifted flour is lighter and easier to mix with other ingredients. For the best results, I recommend using flour 00. I use the coarse sea salt for cooking. The quality is much better than the other refined salt. As for the yeast, I use very needed minimum to help the dough rise. There is a natural process needed for the dough to work itself up that will result in the delicious, genuine bread taste. When all dry ingredients are in a bowl, I mix them with a spoon. Next step is to combine water with dry ingredients. For 250 grams of flour, I use about 175 grams of water. You may add 1 or 2 spoons of water later, depending on the texture of the dough. I stir water with dry ingredients until there is no dry flour in the bowl. My hands are clean. It took me about 5 minutes to combine all ingredients and prepare the bread dough. The last step is to cover the dough with a cut plastic and tighten with a rubber band, or you may use a ball airtight cover, whatever you have. I put the dough in a refrigerator and let it rest for not less than 8 hours but not more than 48 hours. So either I prepare the dough in the evening before I go to sleep or in the morning before I go to work. After the needed resting time in a refrigerator, I take the dough out and let it rest for half an hour to 1 hour at the room temperature. The dough I'm showing was waiting for 1 hour. I am going to form the dough in a ball. This is the technique I use when I am working the dough on a wooden board with a dough scraper. With a circle movement, I create a nice smooth ball that I place back in the bowl. I cover it again and let it rest now at the room temperature for not less than 6 hours, ideally 8 to 12 hours. If I do not have wooden board or dough scraper around, there is another technique that I use to form a dough. But for this technique, I start after 15 or 30 minutes when I take the dough out of the refrigerator. This is because the dough is being stretched and rolled in a ball. If the dough is warm, it will stick on the kitchen board surface. As you see, I'm stretching the dough and then I will start folding it into small square or rectangle. Then I am going to join all corners in one. After that, I slide the dough a couple of times over the kitchen board surface and create a nice smooth ball. For the dough forming, I needed about 5 minutes. Next, I wait for the dough to rise at the room temperature, as I already mentioned, not less than 6 hours, ideally 8 to 12 hours. After the kneading rising time, I start with the baking preparation. I set the air fryer time on 45 minutes and temperature on 200 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, the air fryer is getting heated. I prepare the dough for baking. I remove the dough from the bowl and pour it on a wooden board dusted with flour. I gently turn the dough upside down so that the whole surface is slightly wrapped in flour so it does not stick. I work gently with the dough as I do not want the dough to lose its lightness and puffiness after rising. Then I put the dough on a baking paper. After 5 minutes of dough preparation, I take the hot air fryer pan and put the dough with the baking paper in it. I cut off any protruding corners so the paper is not getting burned. Alternatively, online you can buy special paper trays for air fryers, and instead of baking papers, you can use those. It's even easier. I bake the bread for 40 minutes, not longer. The air fryer would dry the bread if it's longer, and this is just right timing. After 40 minutes, the baking is completed. I switch off the air fryer. I transfer the bread on the wooden surface to rest for another 10 minutes. The bread is ready for eating. My working time on the bread was about 15 minutes. The rest hard work was done by dough itself and the time. I usually count backwards to plan desired baking time. Due to air frying baking, the bread has even crispier crust than the usual bread. I usually prepare this bread in the morning. The house is filled with fresh baked bread, and the usual breakfast becomes a feast. Enjoy your baking. If you like this recipe, give it a like and subscribe for more recipes. Bye!